Michael Bennett sat alone at his corner table in the Summit, Chicago's most exclusive restaurant, where hushed voices and sparkling cutlery set the tone. His sharp eyes skimmed market analytics, numbers flowing like a familiar melody, steady, calculated, secure. At 42, he carved out an empire that dominated the city's skyline. But the price was a heart toughened by years of isolation. His custom suit and sleek watch whispered wealth, yet the roasted quail on his plate remained untouched, a mere backdrop to his relentless pursuit of control. Then the etched glass doors parted, admitting a chill and something far more unsettling. A girl barely 6 slipped inside, her bare feet leaving faint marks on the gleaming marble. Her worn dress, faded from brighter days, clung to her slight frame. She gripped a crumpled sheet of paper, her small hands trembling with resolve. The room stilled, servers froze, and the clatter of silverware faded. Patrons' gazes shifted, some softened with sympathy, others hardened with judgment as the manager strode toward her, his tone polite but insistent, urging her to leave. Michael glanced up, irritation flashing at the disruption. But then he saw her. Lily Thompson, though her name was still a mystery to him. Her hazel eyes, wise beyond her years, swept the room with a blend of fear and grit. Ignoring the manager, she stepped closer, her voice shaky but resolute. "Excuse me, sir," she said, meeting Michael's gaze. "Can I trade this picture for some food? My mom's really hungry." The words struck like a jolt. Michael blinked, his reports forgotten. He gestured the manager away, who retreated reluctantly, and beckoned the girl nearer. "What's your name?" he asked, his tone gentler than he'd meant. "Lily Angelas," she answered, standing taller, as if her name held all her strength. She offered the paper, a child's crayon sketch, and Michael took it with hands that felt unsteady. The drawing was stark. 2 figures, a woman and a girl, seated at a table with an empty plate. Their faces, etched in simple strokes, carried a quiet sorrow that pierced him. The muted greens and grays echoed a memory he'd long suppressed. He was 9 again, in a dim apartment with cracked walls, facing his mother across a bare table. "I ate already," she'd said, her smile frail, her eyes sunken. But he knew there was no food, just as he knew she was starving to give him the last scrap of bread. That night he'd sworn he'd never be hungry again, never be powerless. He'd kept that vow, but at what cost? Now, tears stung his eyes, a crack in the armor he cherished. He brushed them away, hoping Lily didn't see, but her sharp gaze missed nothing. "You okay, mister?" she asked, tilting her head. Michael cleared his throat, tucking the drawing carefully aside. "I'm fine," he said, not quite truthfully. "This is special. Did you draw it?" Lily nodded, a flicker of pride crossing her face. "It's me and my mom. We don't have a lot, but I thought someone might want it enough to give us food." Whispers stirred around them. A woman in diamonds muttered about street kids spoiling the mood. A man in a tie smirked, as if Lily's plea was a spectacle. Michael felt a spark of anger, not at them, but at himself. How had he become part of this polished world, blind to the suffering just outside? The Summit was a mirage, a facade of perfection, while children like Lily went without. "Sit here," he said, startling himself, pointing to the chair opposite. Lily hesitated, glancing at her dirty feet, then at the velvet seat. "It's okay," Michael pressed, sliding his plate toward her. "Try the quail. Ever had it?" She shook her head, climbing up, her legs swinging. The server, uneasy, approached. "Sir, perhaps—" "Another plate," Michael cut in, his voice firm. "And a lemonade." The server nodded and hurried off. Lily eyed the quail, then took a tentative bite. Her eyes lit up, a spark of delight breaking through her cautious demeanor. "It's yummy," she said, her voice lifting. She ate quickly, as if the food might vanish, and Michael watched, a quiet ache spreading in his chest. How long had it been since she'd eaten like this? How long had her mother gone without? "Wait, your mom not eating?" he asked softly. Lily's fork stilled. She says she's okay, but I know she's not. We ran out of food and she gives me whatever's left. Her candor was raw, slicing deeper than any corporate deal. Michael leaned back, her words settling heavily. He'd spent years erecting barriers, wealth, influence, distance, to shield himself from the world. Yet this girl, with her crayon sketch and fearless spirit, had breached them effortlessly. The restaurant's grandeur felt stifling now, its silence mocking the hunger beyond its walls. The server returned with a fresh plate and lemonade. Lily sipped the drink, her eyes roaming the room, taking in the crystal chandeliers and gold-rimmed plates. "You live here?" she asked, her curiosity unguarded. Michael almost smiled. "No, I work with money. Lots of it." "Then you must have a huge house," she said plainly. "Ours is tiny, and sometimes the heat doesn't work." Her words conjured a vivid image, a crumbling apartment, a mother stretched thin, a child bearing burdens too heavy for her age. He wanted to ask more but held back. Instead, he said, "What's your mom's favorite food?" Lily's face brightened. "She loves spaghetti. And garlic bread. She says we need veggies to grow strong, but we don't always have them." Michael signaled the server again, packed 2 meals to go. Spaghetti, garlic bread, a salad. And dessert, something sweet. The server nodded, accustomed to Michael's orders, but this time, a hint of admiration flickered in his eyes. As they waited, Lily swung her legs, her bare feet brushing the air. "Thanks, mister," she said, her voice small but earnest. "Mom's gonna be so happy." Michael glanced at the drawing, now safe in his briefcase. It wasn't just paper. It was a cry, a truth, a tether to his past. He didn't grasp the pull he felt, but he knew he couldn't ignore it. "You're welcome, Lily," he said, his voice thick. "Call me Michael." She grinned, a genuine smile that warmed the sterile room. When the takeout bags arrived, she clutched them tightly, as if they were treasure. "Can I ask you something?" she said, pausing at the table's edge. "Sure. Will you keep my picture?" "I will," he promised, and her smile widened. With a quick wave, she headed for the door, the bags swinging by her side. Michael watched her go, the room settling back into its refined hush, but something in him had shifted. He stood, left a crisp 100 on the table, and followed her out, driven by an urge he couldn't name. Outside, the Chicago wind stung his face, but he barely felt it. Lily was a block ahead, her small figure weaving through the crowd. Michael kept his distance, not wanting to alarm her, but needing to know her destination. The drawing in his briefcase felt heavier now, a reminder of a vow he hadn't yet voiced but already felt bound to honor. For the first time in years, Michael Bennett had no strategy, and somehow, that didn't unsettle him as much as it should. Michael trailed Lily through Chicago's pulsing streets, his polished loafers clashing with the worn sidewalks. The sleek towers of the Loop gave way to the raw edges of Englewood, where dreams seemed to fray, shuttered shops, tagged walls, and kids tossing a frayed ball in an alley, painted a world Michael had escaped long ago. Yet Lily moved with purpose, clutching the takeout bags from the summit, her bare feet deft on the rough pavement. He stayed back, blending as best a man in a bespoke suit could. Why was he here? The question gnawed, but the answer lay in the crayon sketch. A child's plea that had unearthed memories buried under decades of triumph. He saw his mother's face, thin and wary, her hands shaking as she slid a stale crust toward him. "Eat, Mikey," she'd whispered, her voice brittle. That was the last time he'd seen her smile before the illness claimed her. Poverty hadn't just taken their food. It had stolen her life. Lily turned down a narrow street, and Michael followed, his chest tightening as the surroundings grew bleaker. Dilapidated buildings loomed, windows patched with tape or boards. A woman swept a store's stoop, her eyes tired but warm as she nodded at Lily. An elderly man sat on a milk crate, grumbling about soaring rents, his life packed into a worn duffel. Michael slowed, struck by the scene. This wasn't just Lily's world. It was a community teetering on the edge, pushed aside by the very developments his firm Bennett Global had bankrolled. High-rise condos were swallowing these blocks, displacing families, and he'd approved the deals without a glance. Lily stopped at a sagging brick building, its door barely hanging on. She slipped inside, and Michael paused, guilt and curiosity clashing. He edged closer, peering through an unboarded ground-floor window. The apartment was sparse, a lumpy mattress, a rickety table, a lone bulb dangling above. Lily knelt beside a young woman. Sarah, her mother, Michael presumed, whose frail form was curled on a worn couch. Sarah's auburn hair was tied in a loose braid, her face, though weary, echoing Lily's fierce resolve. Lily opened the bags, her voice bright with excitement. "Mom, look! Spaghetti and garlic bread, your favorite!" Sarah sat up, her eyes widening at the food. She pulled Lily into a tight embrace, her shoulders trembling with silent tears. Michael couldn't hear them, but he saw Sarah's hands shake, the way she kissed Lily's forehead, the way she hid her tears. It was a moment of love and desperation, and it cut him deeply. He dealt in figures, revenues, margins. But this was real. This was hunger, not as data, but as a mother's quiet sacrifice. He stepped back, his breath uneven. His mother's memory surged, sharper now. She juggled 2 jobs, her hands rough, her body fading to keep him fed. When she fell ill, there was no safety net, no insurance. Michael had vowed to escape that life, and he had, building a fortress of wealth to shield him from need. But what had he lost? The ability to see people like Sarah and Lily, to feel their struggle instead of turning away. That night, back in his office, the city's lights gleaming through his windows, Michael felt his penthouse, his cars, his empire, turned hollow, like relics of a life he no longer recognized. He opened his briefcase and spread Lily's drawing on his desk. The empty plates stared back, a silent challenge. He couldn't rewrite his past, but he could act now. He called his assistant Ryan, his voice firm despite the turmoil within, arrange a delivery. Food for a week. Pasta, veggies, fruit, some snacks. No logos, discreet. "I'll send the address." Ryan hesitated, unaccustomed to such tasks. "Sir? Is this for a fundraiser?" "No," Michael said. "It's personal." First basket arrived at dawn, left at Sarah's door. Michael watched from a rented car across the street, his pulse racing as Sarah opened the door, confusion melting into disbelief. She scanned the street, seeking the sender, then pulled the basket inside, her hands unsteady as she unpacked it. Lily bounced out, her face glowing at the sight of oranges and a candy bar. Sarah hugged her, and for a moment, her burden seemed lighter. Michael leaned back, an unfamiliar warmth spreading through him. It wasn't joy, it was purpose, something he hadn't felt in decades. But as he drove off, he passed a family loading their lives into a cart, evicted from a nearby building. A sign touted a new condo project, one Bennett Global had funded. The warmth turned cold. He'd helped one family, but how many had he harmed? Inglewood wasn't just a place, it was a battleground, where people like Sarah and Lily fought to survive, while men like him reshaped their world without care. Back at his desk, Michael pinned Lily's drawing beside a framed fortune cover of himself. The contrast was stark, his polished image against her raw truth. He didn't know Sarah's story yet, didn't know why she was starving or how she'd landed here, but he knew one basket wasn't enough. Lily's drawing wasn't just a plea, it was a call to see, to act, to remember the boy he'd been. And for the first time in years, Michael Bennett wanted to answer that call, even if he didn't know where it would lead. Michael stood before the creaking door of Sarah and Lily's Englewood apartment, a grocery basket weighing down his arms. The anonymity of his first delivery had felt safe, but now, a week later, he couldn't stay in the shadows. Lily's drawing, pinned above his desk, was a daily pull to a part of himself he'd thought gone. He knocked, his heart louder than the sound. Footsteps shuffled, and Sarah opened the door, her eyes narrowing at the sight of him, a stranger in a fine coat, out of place in her reality. "You're the one sending the food," Sarah said, her tone cautious, sharp. She was younger than Michael expected, perhaps early 30s, with shadows under her eyes and a strength that mirrored Lily's. "Why?" Before he could respond, Lily peeked out, her face splitting into a grin. "It's the food guy," she chirped, bouncing on her toes. She held up a new drawing, vivid with blues and oranges, 3 figures, her, Sarah, and a man who could only be Michael, at a table laden with food. "This is for you," she said, thrusting it toward him. Michael took it, his throat tightening. The image was a child's dream of plenty, stirring a mix of hope and guilt for the years he'd ignored lives like theirs. "Thank you, Lily," he said, his voice rough. "It's amazing." Sarah's gaze softened, but wariness lingered. "Come in," she said at last, stepping aside. The apartment was bare but tidy, with traces of care, a mended curtain, a stack of borrowed books. Lily dragged a chair over, insisting Michael sit, her chatter easing the tension as Sarah unpacked the basket. Bread, eggs, apples, a small pack of cookies. "Where are you doing this?" Sarah asked again, pausing over an apple. "We don't know you." Michael faltered, the truth pushing through. "I saw Lily's first drawing," he said. "It reminded me of my childhood. My mom and I. We struggled too. I know what it's like to be hungry." Sarah studied him, her face guarded. Lily, oblivious, climbed onto the couch, her voice bright. "Sometimes the heat goes out, and I get scared. Mom calls it a game, but I don't like it." Michael's chest tightened. He'd already paid their overdue utility bill, a quiet act he hadn't meant to reveal, but Lily's words made it vivid. How many nights had she shivered in the cold? How many times had Sarah lied to make it bearable? He saw his own childhood, flickering candles, his mother's forced cheer to mask their fear. "I'm sorry," he said, the words escaping. No kid should feel that. Sarah's jaw tightened. "We get by," she said, but her voice wavered, betraying her strain. She sat across from him, hands clasped. "The library where I worked shut down, funding cuts. I've been taking odd jobs, but it's not enough. Rent keeps climbing, and Lily..." She glanced at Lily, who was coloring on a scrap. Michael knew the story not from stats, but from his own past. His mother had faced the same trap. Low pay, rising costs, no escape. He wanted to tell Sarah he'd fix the heat, that he could do more, but her pride stopped him. Instead, he said, "You're a librarian, that's vital work." "Was," she corrected, her tone sharp. "Now I'm just trying to keep this roof over us." Lily looked up, her cram pausing. "Mom's the best. She reads to me every night, even when she's tired." Her faith in her mother was unshakable, and it hit Michael hard. He thought of his own mother, reading by lamplight, her voice steady despite their crumbling world. The talk shifted, guided by Lily's stories of her favorite books and her wish for a pet fish. Michael listened, surprised by how easily she pulled him in. He'd skipped a shareholder call to be here, a choice that would have stunned him weeks ago. Yet in this small apartment, with its faint chill and patched walls, he felt more alive than he had in years. As he rose to leave, Sarah handed him a chipped mug of instant coffee. "I don't know what you're after," she said, her voice softer. "But thank you. For the food. For noticing us." Michael took the mug, its warmth grounding him. "I'm not after anything," he said, and for once it was true. He'd built a life chasing leverage, turning every moment into a transaction. But this was different. He didn't have a name for it, but it felt like atonement. Millie ran to him, hugging his legs. "Come back, okay? I'll draw you another." Her trust was a fragile gift, and Michael felt its weight. "I'll be back," he promised, tousling her hair. As he stepped into the dusk, the new drawing in hand, he glanced back. Sarah stood at the window, watching, her face a mix of gratitude and caution. Michael knew she didn't fully trust him, and he didn't blame her. Trust was a luxury in a world that took more than it gave. Driving to his penthouse, the city's glow blurring past, Michael felt his walls, wealth, power, solitude, crack further. Lily's drawing had done more than stir memories. It had awakened a hunger for connection, for purpose. He didn't know how to help them fully, but he couldn't walk away. Englewood was a web of need, and Lily and Sarah were just one thread among thousands. Could he change their story without facing his role in their struggle? The question trailed him into the night, as heavy as the drawing he held. Michael sat in his office, the Chicago skyline a dazzling but empty backdrop. Lily's drawings, 3 now, each a burst of crayon hope, hung above his desk, their simplicity clashing with the polished awards on his shelves. For weeks, he'd delivered baskets to Sarah and Lily, each visit deepening his tie to their resilient world. But baskets weren't enough. Sarah's story, her quiet strength as a mother and former librarian, haunted him. He'd been that kid, watching his own mother fade under poverty's weight. He couldn't let history repeat. He'd made discreet inquiries through contacts at the Oakwood Community Center, a project he'd funded years ago without much care. They needed a literacy coordinator, and Sarah, with her skills and warmth, was ideal. Michael made a call, not to pull strings but to ensure her application reached the right desk. When the center called her for an interview, he felt a spark of pride, as if he'd done something his mother would have smiled at. On his next visit to Englewood, Lily greeted him at the door, her eyes alight. "Mom's got a job interview," she announced, pulling him inside. Sarah stood by the table, smoothing a faded blazer, her face a mix of nerves and resolve. "It's at Oakwood," she said, her gaze piercing Michael. "You know anything about that?" Michael shrugged, aiming for nonchalance. "Sounds like a solid place. You'll nail it." He didn't mention his role, didn't want her to feel obligated. But Lily, unaware of the subtext, grabbed his hand. "If Mom gets the job, she won't cry at night anymore." "Thank you, Michael." Her words cut through his careful distance. He knelt, meeting her gaze. "Your mom's tough, Lily. She's got this." Sarah aced the interview, and in securing the job, a part-time role, leading literacy programs with a spot for Lily in the center's free after-school program, when Michael arrived with the next basket, Lily threw her arms around him, her voice muffled against his coat. "Mom's happy now. You made her happy." Sarah, standing behind, smiled, a genuine smile, not the strained one she'd worn before. But her eyes held a question, one she didn't voice until Lily ran off to draw. "You did this, didn't you?" Sarah said, her tone pointed but not hostile. "The job, the utility bill, all of it." "Why, Michael? What's your motive?" The question stung, but he understood. Trust was a casualty of hardship, and Sarah had been hurt before. He set the basket down, searching for words. "No motive," he said at last. I know what it's like to have nothing. My mom, she was like you, fought for me every day. But she didn't make it. No money, no doctor. I was 11 when she died." His voice cracked and he looked away, the memory raw. "I don't want Lily to lose you like I lost her." Sarah's expression softened, but her arms stayed crossed, a shield against vulnerability. "I'm grateful," she said. "But I don't want to be your project. I've had people help before, landlords, employers, always with a catch. Lily and I, we're not for sale." Her words exposed the gap between his intentions and her reality. Michael nodded, respecting her stance. "I get it, no catches. I just want you to have a shot." He paused, then added, "You're not a project, Sarah. You're a fighter. Lily's lucky to have you." The tension eased, but didn't vanish. Sarah glanced at Lily, who was humming as she drew, and her shoulders relaxed. "I start next week," she said quietly. "They're letting Lily join the after-school program. It's a lifeline." Michael smiled, relief washing over him. That's all I wanted to hear. But the warmth faded later that week. Walking through Englewood with another basket, Michael overheard neighbors, families displaced, rents soaring, schools shuttered. One man holding a child named Bennett Global as the force behind condos pricing them out. The truth hit hard. He'd helped Sarah, but his empire was part of the system, crushing people like her. The job he'd secured felt like a patch on a wound he'd helped inflict. Back at his penthouse, Michael pored over reports, confirming the reality. His investments had driven gentrification, uprooting hundreds. He thought of Lily's first drawing, the empty plate, and saw it now as a symbol of a system that kept families like hers on the brink. Guilt mingled with memories of his mother's final days. her whispered regret for not giving him more. He'd built his life to escape that pain, but had he just passed it on? When he next saw Sarah, she was lighter, her eyes brighter as she shared her first day at work. But her gratitude came with a line. "This job means everything," she said, handing him a coffee, "but I need you to step back now. Lily's getting attached, and I can't risk her heart breaking if you leave." Michael nodded, respecting her fear, though it hurt. "I'll honor your space," he promised. As he left, Lily slipped him a new drawing, 3 figures holding hands in a garden, their smiles wide. "That's us," she said, pointing. "We're happy now." Clutching the drawing, Michael walked to his car, the weight of Sarah's words and his own guilt pressing down. He'd given them a start, but at what cost to others? Could he keep Lily's smile without confronting the harm he'd done? The drawing felt like a challenge, a call, to be more than the man he'd become. Michael sat across from Sarah and Lily at their small Inglewood table, the scent of brewed coffee blending with the warmth of their modest home. Lily's latest drawing lay between them, a vivid sketch of a building adorned with colorful murals, people sharing food and laughter. "This is my dream place," Lily said, her eyes glowing, "where everyone eats and learns and nobody's afraid." Her words, so pure yet powerful, sparked something in Michael. He glanced at Sarah, who nodded, her face warmed by cautious hope. That night, the idea for Unity House was born, a community hub to give families like theirs a chance. The concept grew over weeks, fueled by late-night talks and Lily's vivid imagination. Michael offered his resources, Sarah her expertise as a librarian, and Lily her vision of walls full of colors. They found a vacant lot in Englewood, a stretch of cracked pavement ringed by faded dreams. Michael saw possibility where others saw decay, but also the shadow of his company's legacy, condo projects that had displaced families, leaving scars on this ground. Guilt gnawed, but Lily's dream drove him forward. One evening, as they reviewed plans for Unity House, Lily climbed onto Michael's lap, her voice soft. "I had a dream," she said, tracing her drawing. "We lived in a house with a yard. You, me, and Mom. Can that happen?" Her question hung, delicate and weighty. Michael's heart ached. He wanted to promise her a family, a home. Instead, he hugged her, his voice thick. "I'll always be here for you, Lily. No matter what." Sarah watched, her eyes glistening, and for the first time, she didn't look away. The moment shifted something in them. Over coffee, Sarah opened up, her voice halting. "Lily's dad left when she was tiny," she said. "Promised he'd stay, then disappeared. I've been scared to trust since. But you keep coming back." Her words were a fragile bridge, and Michael crossed it with his own truth. "My mom sang to me when we had nothing," he said, staring at the table. "She died thinking she failed me. I spent my life running from that, building walls to never feel helpless again. But you and Lily, you're showing me I can't keep running." Their shared scars drew them closer, but the world pressed in. Michael faced resistance from his board at Bennett Global, who dismissed Unity House as a charity stunt. "Why sink money into a lost cause?" one director scoffed, blind to the families behind the numbers. Michael's anger flared. He saw Lily's empty plate in their words, Sarah's sleepless nights. "Because it's right," he snapped, questioning his place in the system he'd built. He began diverting funds from condo projects to Unity House, a quiet revolt against the empire he'd once valued. In Englewood, Michael and Sarah worked together, meeting locals to shape the hub's programs. Free meals, literacy classes, youth activities. Lily tagged along, her crayons turning scraps into visions of hope. One day she tugged Michael's sleeve, pointing to a wall in the half-built center. "Can we paint it like my drawings?" she asked. Michael grinned, handing her a brush. "It's your wall, kid." Watching her paint, her small hands fearless, he felt a lightness he hadn't known since childhood. But the deeper he wove into their lives, the heavier his guilt grew. He confided in Sarah one night, the construction site still around them. "My company helped fracture this place," he said, his voice low. "I didn't see it then, but I do now. How do I fix that?" Sarah touched his arm, her voice steady. You start here. You're here now, and that's what matters to Lily. To me. Her words were a lifeline, pulling him from his past's weight. Unity House took shape, its walls rising as their bond deepened. On a trial opening, Lily led kids inside, her pride radiant. She hung her first drawing, The Empty Plate, in the entryway, beside a sign where every plate is full. Michael watched, his throat tight, as families entered, their faces reflecting the hope in Lily's eyes. Sarah stood beside him, her hand brushing his. We built this, she said, her voice thick. You gave us more than food, Michael. You gave us a future. He wanted to hold that moment, to believe he could be their family. But Lily's dream of a shared home lingered, a reminder of the line between helping and belonging. Could he stay without overshadowing their independence? The question clung as he watched Lily paint another mural, her laughter filling the hub she'd inspired. The sun sank over Inglewood as Unity House opened its doors for its grand launch, the once bleak lot now vibrant with life. Children raced through the crowd, faces painted with hearts and moons, while families shared warm meals under glowing lanterns. Lily, in a green dress Sarah had crafted, stood on a small stage, leading kids in a play about a seed becoming a great oak. That's us, she whispered to Michael backstage, pointing to the paper oak behind her. We're growing tall. Michael's heart swelled, but a quiet ache remained. Lily's dream had flourished, but his role in it was still unclear. The crowd quieted as Michael took the microphone, his suit swapped for a simple jacket, a sign of the man he was becoming. He faced the audience. Mothers like Sarah, children like Lily, neighbors scarred by his company's projects. I've spent my life building, he began, his voice raw but firm, but I've also broken communities, families, trust. Bennett Global played a role, and I'm sorry. Murmurs spread, some wary, others nodding. Unity House isn't just a place, he continued. It's a vow to do better, to listen, to ensure every plate is full. He pointed to Lily's first drawing, framed by the entrance, its empty plate a reminder of their purpose. Sarah stood nearby, her eyes glowing with pride and something deeper. She'd taken charge at Unity House, her librarian skills shaping programs that gave parents tools and kids dreams. Michael watched her comfort a father enrolling in a literacy class, her warmth a light in Englewood's struggles. Lily ran to her, slipping a new drawing into Michael's hand. He unfolded it, a vibrant scene of Unity House surrounded by joyful people, with him, Sarah, and Lily at the heart. This is everyone's home now, Lily said, her voice earnest. But you gotta help other places too, okay? Her words struck like a gentle thunderbolt. Michael knelt, meeting her gaze. You want me to go? He asked, half joking, but his chest tightened. Lily nodded, her small hand on his cheek. You're our family, but other kids need you, like I did. Her clarity broke open a truth he'd sidestepped. He'd grown to love Lily and Sarah, had dreamed of being their anchor, but staying might stifle their hard-won freedom, casting a shadow over their light. Later, as the crowd thinned, Michael and Sarah walked through Unity House, its muraled walls warm under soft lights. She's right, isn't she? Sarah said, her voice low. You've got a gift, Michael, turning pain into hope. Inglewood's just the beginning. She paused, her hand brushing his. But I'm scared. Lily loves you. She stopped, her eyes searching his, and Michael knew what she couldn't say. He felt it too. A bond, fierce and fragile. I love you both, he said, the words raw and true. But Unity House, Lily's dream, it's bigger than us. There are other Englewoods, other kids with empty plates. I need to bring this fight to them. Sarah nodded, tears falling, and pulled him into a hug. You'll come back, she whispered. You better. The choice settled like a weight and a release. Michael would stay in Chicago, but he'd pour his wealth and influence into Unity House, making it a beacon for the community. He'd step back from Sarah and Lily's daily lives, giving them space to thrive, but he'd remain their partner, their friend, visiting when he could. As he left that night, Lily's final drawing sat on his desk, a guide for his path ahead. The next morning, Michael stood in Inglewood, watching kids stream into Unity House for a morning program. Sarah met him there, Lily clutching a new sketch, a single, colorful building labeled Unity House. "For you to remember," she said, her voice steady. Michael hugged her tightly, then Sarah, their embrace a vow to carry each other forward. As he walked away, the drawing in his hand, Michael looked back at Unity House, its walls alive with Lily's colors. Sarah and Lily were building a life, their strength a spark he'd helped kindle. He wasn't their savior, he was their ally, a man reshaped by a child's crayon and a mother's courage. Could he sustain Unity House and make it a model for others? The question lingered, but Michael Bennett believed he could try.